Is Iran now openly mocking the United States, turning Trump's blockade strategy into a symbolic challenge rather than a decisive move? In the Strait of Hormuz standoff, is Tehran refusing to yield even as Washington attempts to tighten pressure through its naval presence? Has Iran now unveiled a broader strategy designed to counter and outmaneuver Trump's efforts to control the critical waterway? And as Tehran stands its ground, is Trump already looking toward a second round of talks in Islamabad to reset the equation? Despite the United States announcing a naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran appears to be largely unaffected in its immediate response. Iran has also dismissed the impact of the blockade, suggesting it can offset pressure by expanding cross-border trade activity. Officials highlighted the country's extensive 8,000-kilometer land and maritime borders, indicating that alternative routes remain available. According to reports, Iran's interior minister has instructed border provinces to increase both imports and exports. Iran's interior minister said, and I quote, "The governors of border regions, for the purposes of neutralizing enemy threat to the level of population's life, should further strengthen and develop border trade, including imports of primary goods and exports of products, mobilizing all the possible national and regional resources for this purpose and interacting with public entities, such as cooperatives of border residents, and so on." End quote. Despite enforcing a naval blockade, the United States is reportedly exploring the possibility of resuming talks with Iran. According to reports, Donald Trump indicated that a new round of discussions could take place within the next 2 days. He also suggested that Pakistan may once again serve as the venue for these negotiations. Meanwhile, on April 13th, U.S. Vice President JD Vance accused Iran of engaging in economic pressure tactics. Vance also called for the complete reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, describing any restrictions as unacceptable.
So I think it was the first time that you'd ever seen the Iranian government, the U.S. government meet at such a high level, maybe in the history of the current leadership of Iran. So that's, I think, a positive. And again, we did make some progress in the negotiation. The big question from here on out is whether the Iranians will have enough flexibility, whether the Iranians will accept the critical things that we need to see in order for things to get done. Whether we have further conversations, whether we ultimately get to a deal, I really think the ball is in the Iranian court because we put a lot on the table. We actually made very clear what our red lines were. We also made clear, Brett, that we actually would be very happy. The President of the United States has said he would be very happy if Iran was treated like a normal country, if it had a normal economy, if its people were able to prosper and thrive. But in order for Iran to be a normal country economically, it's going to have to be a normal country from the perspective of not pursuing a nuclear weapon, and it's going to have to be a normal country from not pursuing terrorism. And so there really is, I think, a grand deal to be had here, but it's up to the Iranians, I think, to take the next step. Is that we need to see the Straits of Hormuz fully open. And this is, frankly, one of the things where the Iranians tried to move the goalposts during the negotiation. We made very clear that that's unacceptable. We came to the negotiations saying the United States, what we've given here is a ceasefire. We've stopped bombing the country. What we expect the Iranians to give up is a full reopening of the Straits of Hormuz. We have seen, as the president has said, some significant uptick in traffic coming through the Straits of Hormuz. That's good for the global economy. It was about the United States and the fact that he's been a good partner to both me and the president personally, but also to the United States. I'm sad that he lost. We'll work very well, I'm sure, with the next prime minister of Hungary. But it wasn't a bad trip at all because it's worth standing by people, even if you don't win every race. They basically threatened any ship that's moving through the Straits of Hormuz. Well, as the President of the United States showed, two can play at that game. And if the Iranians are going to try to engage in economic terrorism, we're going to abide by a simple principle that no Iranian ships are getting out either. We know that's a big deal to them. We know that applies additional economic leverage.
Iran strongly condemned the United States as it launched a provocative naval blockade on the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz, escalating tensions in one of the world's most critical shipping lanes. Iran's IRGC Quds Force chief boldly declared that both the U.S. and Israel will ultimately return completely empty-handed from their aggressive maneuvers in the region. Brigadier General Esmail Qani's pointed comments were prominently reported by the Iranian state-affiliated outlet Press TV on April 13, highlighting Tehran's unyielding stance. The U.S. on April 13 officially launched a comprehensive naval blockade aimed specifically at stopping ships from entering or exiting key Iranian ports along the Persian Gulf. However, fresh reports indicated that multiple commercial and cargo ships successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz despite the heavily publicized U.S. blockade efforts. An Iran-linked oil tanker along with several Chinese ships were reportedly able to transit freely amid the ongoing blockade, underscoring potential cracks in the American enforcement. The Quds Force commander said, quote, "The Unified Resistance Front has a powerful and effective presence throughout the region, and is lying in wait for the enemies of humanity. They will pull out of the region without any achievement." Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, Esmail Baghaei, has also stepped forward to sharply criticize this controversial move directly on the social media platform known as X. The Iranian foreign ministry spokesman said, quote, "Can an illegal war of choice be won through a revenge of choice against the global economy? Is it ever worthwhile to cut off one's nose to spite one's face?" Unquote. Iran's military has issued a stern warning that any perceived threat directed towards its vital ports would inevitably trigger a much broader and more intense regional response across the area. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, has explicitly stated that no port located in the Persian Gulf or the Sea of Oman would remain secure or operational if its own ports were targeted or hit in any way. Iran's armed forces spokesperson said, quote, "Enemy-affiliated vessels do not and will not have the right to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Other vessels will be allowed to transit the strait in compliance with the regulations of the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran." Unquote. A Chinese tanker sanctioned by the United States sailed through the Strait of Hormuz on April 14, marking a striking development amid the new maritime standoff in the Gulf. The vessel passed through Hormuz despite the US-imposed blockade, according to ship tracking data that showed it successfully made the transit out of the Gulf. Reuters made the claim about the vessel Rich Starry, citing tracking data from LSEG, Marine Traffic, and PLR to document the ship's movement through the strategic waterway. According to the same data, the Rich Starry would be the first ship to make it through the strait and exit the Gulf since the blockade began. Notably, both the tanker and its owner, Shanghai Xianrun Shipping Company, Limited, are under US sanctions, making the passage especially politically sensitive. Reuters reported that sanctions on the Chinese-linked company were imposed because of its dealings with Iran, placing the vessel in the wider network of trade restrictions tied to Tehran. The Rich Starry is a medium-range tanker carrying about 250,000 barrels of methanol, according to the shipping data cited in the reports. The vessel loaded that cargo at its last port of call in Hamria in the United Arab Emirates, adding another regional link to the ship's voyage. Reuters also reported that the Chinese-owned tanker has a Chinese crew on board, based on the available vessel data. An Iranian embassy statement described the Rich Starry as a Malawi-flagged tanker, adding another detail to the growing attention around the ship's transit. Iranian embassy in Ghana wrote on X, and I quote, "Breaking, Rich Starry, a Chinese oil tanker sanctioned for shipping Iranian oil, flying the flag of Malawi, a country with no coastline, just sailed through America's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz." The Navy, with its many big beautiful ships, issued repeated warnings. Reportedly, the tanker's captain upgraded to premium to skip the ads. Edit. We're being told the blockade only applies to countries the US isn't afraid of. That list used to be long. It now fits on Trump's McDonald's receipt, delivered by DoorDash. Unquote.